Hey guys, APAV here, and it's been a little while. I might dedicate an entire video as to why that is, but right now I've been collecting a lot of ATV games and wanted to kind of talk about them. I was a big fan of ATV Offroad Fury 4 for a good portion of my life, and ever since then I've been trying to find something that could also scratch that itch. So this is going to be a look at 4 ATV games that I found across the PS2 and PS3, and also kind of the most popular ones. So let me know if you recognize any of these games or have played them, and if you have any other ATV games that you like, leave them down in the comments, because I really like ATV four-wheeler based games, and there's not too many of them. Dirt bikes used to get a lot of the love, and then they kind of throw ATVs sometimes in there, but they're not all too common. So I guess first let's look at MX vs ATV Unleashed. It is the first in the MX vs ATV series. There is a MX series prior to this, which is kind of different than MX vs ATV. There's actually an MX Unleashed that is entirely different, which is quite interesting. I later learned that it is a combination that the MX franchise and the ATV Offroad Fury franchise made. So this was supposed to be the continuation of ATV Offroad Fury. Now before we take a look, even though it's been a little while, I wanted to point out that I've done a lot with the channel. I've actually branched out across tons of different platforms. So if you watch me on YouTube, you can also find me on Facebook, Rumble, Odyssey, and BitChute now. So if you're on any of those platforms or want to go to any of those platforms, you can find me there. Links are all in the description, and that's been a big thing that I've been getting into. Also, I have a website, apavgaming.com, where I plan to post some blogs and stuff. Anyways, here's some gameplay. So, as I was saying, MX vs ATV Unleashed is the combination of the MX and ATV Offroad Fury franchise. So it takes a lot from those. However, it's missing some and it adds some, and it's a very weird mix overall. It was made, I believe, before ATV Offroad Fury 4 and Pro, but this series continued past the ATV Offroad Fury franchise, so you can still find MX vs ATV games, but they're very different. One thing I gotta point out about the controls for MX and MX vs ATV is just it always feels like you're controlling the vehicle and not the rider. I liken it to driving an RC car. It really feels like you're just kind of on this rocket ship being thrown around sometimes, especially when making turns. It takes a little bit getting used to if you're used to playing other racing games, but it can be pretty satisfying, especially the control you have in the air, because a lot of racing games, once you're in the air, you barely can turn and you'll crash right into things. But that's part of the difficulty in real life, I suppose. The tracks seem like they're designed to have you memorize them like real motocross tracks, where you should probably do a pre-lap to understand what's going on. You can't just preload every jump and expect to land exactly where you should. You actually have to gauge the distance of the jumps, which really makes these games difficult. It feels more like a racing sim while also maintaining very arcadey controls. The tricks, they're very similar to ATV Offroad Fury. However, to do flips is just very convoluted. From what I can tell, you have to hold down a special trick button and then flick the analog stick in the direction you want to flip. Sometimes this works perfectly. Sometimes your character will just never stop flipping and you'll inevitably crash. Sometimes you want to go one direction and you'll go another direction. And then sometimes you'll feel like you've done it perfectly and you'll still bounce off the ATV, I guess from landing too hard. but other times you'll do it and you'll be fine. It I have yet to master it or understand why sometimes it doesn't work. But other than that, the tricks are very similar to other ATV games where basically you point the analog stick in a certain direction to select a trick, and you press circle or triangle to do said trick. It makes it feel a lot like a Tony Hawk's game in the way that you do your tricks. However, it's very difficult to link them, I've found, in MX versus ATV. You can't wheelie very easily, which makes it very difficult to link the tricks together between jumps. So you end up relying on flips, but as I just said, flips are very difficult to pull off. Something that I love about these old games is the music, especially extreme sports and quads and all that. You gotta have some good music, and MX vs. ATV has that. It has a very recognizable soundtrack of recognizable bands from the time. Got some punk, metal, hard rock, and then the thrown in rap for, I guess, popularity's sake. But I love the soundtrack in this game, and I feel like most people who grew up playing it will mention the soundtrack. Now, a lot of people will mention a open world mode, which this doesn't have. It is only in MX Unleashed, and I do not know why they got rid of that, because the open world, I think, was a lot of people's favorite part, where you could drive around these big worlds and just goof off. That was one of the features that seemed limited. It also seems limited in character customization. There's a lot here, but the way you do it is very simulator-esque. Basically, if you want to buy a different color for a vehicle, you have to buy an entirely different vehicle. It takes a long time to load in between every vehicle, and the stats aren't very well explained either. It doesn't really show stats very clearly. To customize your character, you don't have as many color options. You are basically stuck with the palettes they choose, but customization's there. That was just a big part for me in these games, unlocking and customizing things, where I feel like once I basically just buy a few select things and then I'm good for the rest of the game. But that's MX versus ATV. It's decent. It's just different. The series seems to go downhill just a couple games after this. They eventually end up removing tricks, and I really hope they bring back tricks, because that was a big part of the appeal of these games to me. Hopefully we'll see that in the up-and-coming MX vs. ATV game. I'm torn as to which game I should bring up next. I guess I'll go with Motorstorm, since I'm the most familiar with it. This one specifically is Motorstorm Pacific Rift. It's the one I knew most people playing. Both these games have a split screen mode. Motorstorm had an online multiplayer. This has a boost function, where if you overboost, your vehicle just explodes. The physics are very intense and bouncy. They feel almost floaty some of the times, which isn't the best, because you have almost no control over the vehicle once you're in the air, which leads you to exploding and crashing a lot. It has some road rash features where you can hit people off their vehicles, and it has some pretty decent graphics. You can also select if you want different sized trucks in your races. There's a lot of tracks to choose from, and it's pretty fun doing custom races and just like being an ATV racing against all monster trucks, or being a monster truck just crushing a ton of dirt bikes and ATVs. There isn't too much customization in it, which leads me to not play it that often when I'm not playing with other people. You basically have pre-made characters that you can select from. There's quite a few, so that's nice, but it's definitely not as detailed as other games. There's a lot of vehicles, but I guess since there are so many different categories of vehicles, the customization is just down to picking the bike or vehicle or quad that you want. It's still a high quality racing game with quads in it. I guess that's the best I can say about it. The next one I'm going to mention is something that I didn't even know about until this year, which was Pure. Pure was part of Disney's entry into the gaming world, like they did with Split Second, a car racing game. Pure is only quads. It's all quad racing, which shocks me that a company as popular as Disney would jump into the quad racing industry. But it is different beyond compare to the other games. First of all, it's all based around tricks. The tricks are very similar to MX versus ATV. However, you do the tricks in order to unlock a boost, and the further up the boost chain you go, the more complicated tricks you can do. If you get your boost maxed out, you can do a special trick over a very high jump because it's a very long trick, but if you pull it off, then it replenishes your boost. So essentially you work your boost all the way up, then you can deplete it all the way down, and then you can do your special trick and get it all the way back. It makes the game super intense and has a steep learning curve right after like the first race. It gets really difficult because then you're trying to pull off perfect tricks while focusing on racing, and then trying to determine if you should use your boost or try to hold out until you can unlock the special and then use all your boost at once. Some people say it's the most, like, gives you the feeling of racing quads the most. However, for me, the controls seemed very slippery. I felt more often just anxious at trying to pull off all the tricks than actually feeling the excitement of racing. Another downside to this game is there's no split screen, which is odd for a racing game. The music is okay, but it gets drowned out some of the time. So you might want to adjust the volume settings. One of the added things to it, again with the tricks and everything being so different, is the insane vehicle customization. Now, you literally build your own ATV in this. It kind of borderlines insanity because every part you put on it mildly changes the stats. Sometimes the stats don't make any sense because parts you add on to it wouldn't do that in real life, kind of like guns in Call of Duty, where different attachments that are actually giving you a boost in things that they wouldn't in real life. Figuring out exactly what you need is almost a science where you're experimenting on, do I want more power or a vehicle more built for tricks, or what exactly do I need? One thing that I found was I was working very hard to try to get a new engine so my vehicle would be beyond faster, and maybe, like, you know how in an RPG you want to grind up. However, anytime you use a higher class engine, you can only use that ATV in higher class races. So it almost makes no progress because then you're only racing people who can go the same speed as you. I guess good for gaming, but not so much on just wanting to enjoy a race for the feel of it. And for a game about doing tricks, you don't have a open freestyle area. Like, there's no arenas to do tricks in. The freestyle mode in this game is still around a typical racetrack. You're only using that racetrack to do tricks, essentially. So you're all racing around this track and you have a limited amount of gas, and you're trying to get the highest score before you run out of gas. And then there's a lot of Mario Party-esque pop-ups that you need to grab to slow down your fuel usage or double your score. It's a fun game mode, but I would have really appreciated a freestyle arena type area. The character customization is also very Disneyified. You only have a very select few amount of characters to select from, and they all have bios that honestly I don't relate to any of them. I didn't want to choose any of these characters, and the first guy is very basic, and the skins to me don't make much sense because half his hair is dark and the other half is bleached, and it makes it look like he's wearing a wig. But the core gameplay is really impressive, and it's just a different experience to any other quad racing game. I would like to see another one come out just for the heck of it, because it is a very unique game that I don't think you can find too many other games like it. I think there was one similar to it that was a dirt biking game on the PS2, but I haven't played that and there's no quads in it, so it's not making this video. Last but not least is ATV Offroad Fury 4. This, to me, was the peak of the franchise, except for maybe Pro on the PSP. It's very similar. There's just so much to unpack here, and I have a Let's Play of it that's like 45 minutes long if you want to go into absolute detail. To me, the physics are like perfect. It's not bouncy, it's not too floaty. You really feel the weight of your guy leaning into the vehicle. Upgrades are absolutely insane with the detail. You're not building your own ATV, but you're definitely upgrading every part inside of that thing. And you're also customizing the every color you want on it. There's 3 different colors, and you can change it to anything on any vehicle along with your character. And then your character you can change the gear of too, along with the color being more detailed. In MX versus ATV you can change some of the gear, but the color options are very limited. The tricks are much like pure in MX versus ATV. However, the flips are a lot easier. You just double tap down or up to do a back or front flip. You use triangle or circle in a direction to do a trick, or triangle and circle together to do a more impressive trick. There's a bunch of different game modes. You also get dirt bikes, trucks, and buggies. So it's a bit in between Motorstorm and MX vs. ATV. The soundtrack is awesome. I still listen to the songs to this day that I found in that game. It's a lot like MX vs. ATV, where you could just sit there listening to the soundtrack. It has 4-player split screen, however that limits a lot of your options. You can do 2-player split screen, which lets you play all the different types of races, and doesn't downgrade on the quality as much as 4-player does. I haven't noticed any difference between 2-player and single player. You can also create your own custom tracks. You can do a light track for dirt bike and quads, or you can do a heavy track for buggies and trucks. It has some pretty long loading times, and you only get to make it in a set world, but you get to choose all your jumps and turns and put some aesthetic things around the track if you wish. In order to unlock stuff in this game, you just have to win money. You win credits and then spend the credits on things, so it's very easy to understand. You earn some credits, you earn more if you come in first. It's very understandable. There's no like you'll only win credits if you come in first type of thing, or that you only unlock things the further you get into the game. When you upgrade stuff, it doesn't put you into a new class. I think there's a limit on using pro vehicles in amateur races, but you can use amateur vehicles in pro races. You can definitely upgrade your vehicles to be way better than the competition in a lot of the races. And then you unlock sponsors, and the sponsors will give you prototype parts, new gloves and stuff for your character customization, some minor deals for earning credits. It's not as detailed as Pro on PSP, But to me, this, I know I could sound biased because this is the one I grew up with, but to me, this is so far the best quad racing game out there. And I would really love to see an ATV Offroad Fury 5. I keep hoping for MX versus ATV to live up to it, but the physics and everything I could do in this game, I'm still playing it 15 years later. I think that speaks a lot for it. But all these games are worth checking out and playing. They're not too expensive, so you can still get them pretty easily. And I'll leave it up to you guys to decide which one is your favorite. Obviously, this is partly my biased opinion and biased list, but it's fun talking about them and sharing them with the world, and I hope that maybe you guys could pick them up and enjoy them too. Well, I suppose that is it for this list. I thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to have some more videos coming up soon. I am working on a interesting playthrough, but I think I'll talk about that later. So in the meantime, I'll see you guys in the next video.